Welcome to Rails, Ales, and Old Towns. There are few sports experiences more electric than being in a European soccer stadium on match day. The chants, the songs, the scarves held high, and the roar of the crowd when the ball hits the back of the net. Today's guest has made it his mission to help more people feel that magic for themselves. Paul Gerald is the founder of Groundhopper Guides, a travel brand dedicated to bringing thrilling European soccer experiences directly to travelers. And in addition to telling us a little bit about his business and some stories from the terraces, Paul shares how he fell in love with the beautiful game, the story behind his record-setting run of stadium visits, and why he believes that attending a match is one of the best ways to get to know a European city and its people. Paul also shares some of his favorite places to catch a game and what time of year he recommends planning a trip. All right, let's go to the pitch.
What is the gap between the train and the platform?
Let's welcome to Rails, Ales, and Old Towns, Paul Gerald, the founder of Groundhopper Guides.
Hello, thank you.
So Paul, now you like soccer.
Quite a bit, always have, yes.
Well, why don't you tell us right off the bat, what does Groundhopper mean?
Ground is a kind of a old-fashioned British term for a place where a sports event occurs. So it's the equivalent of when Americans say ballpark, for example. So British people would call that what we might call a soccer stadium, they would call a football ground. So ground hopping is literally going from one ground to another as a tourist, as a neutral, they would say.
How'd you fall in love with the beautiful game? And also, how did you end up as this titan of attending soccer games in Europe, specifically England?
It actually started when I was about, 11 or 12 years old. We're talking about the late 1970s, when I was growing up in Memphis, Tennessee, and I played in the church league. I was a goalie because I was too lazy to run in the heat of Memphis, Tennessee. So I played goal. And there was an English kid on the team who regaled me with stories of the Liverpool-Everton game and the Rangers-Celtic game. And so I loved hearing stories of this world that I knew nothing about. And then, one day he told me that Nottingham Forest had won the European Championship. And I literally remember thinking, I don't know what any of that means. How is there a team called Nottingham Forest? What is that even, some other language? And what does it mean to win Europe? I don't. And I now realize, of course, what he was talking about was the great Brian Clough teams of 79 and 80 and 81. And, I didn't know any of that. So I just became fascinated that there was this whole world out there. And then I got a chance, because I was playing the game and on public television in the 1970s, I don't know if anybody remembers this, or anybody under about 40, but there was a show called Soccer Made in Germany that was on public broadcasting in the United States in those days. It was a German Bundesliga match of the day type show with highlights hosted by a Welsh guy. I don't know how it came into existence, but every weekend there it was, high level German and other European soccer on my television in Memphis in because, it was just there. I saw the game at this very high level. I saw these stadiums packed with people with scarves and flags and singing. And I just completely was enchanted by the whole thing.
You're telling me that you were just tuning in on a weekly show with a Welshman showing German game highlights in the U.S.
That's right. I don't know why that show existed, but it was on public broadcasting. And so it was entirely possible. And so he would show things like, when there was no games, they would show World Cup highlights. And in fact, that's how I first, actually saw footage of Nottingham Forest playing Malmo, in the European semifinals. And I was like, wait, why is a team from England playing a team from Sweden? This doesn't make any sense. I grew up in Southeastern Conference football world. The idea of some kind of continental championship just made no sense at all. But it was amazing. I sort of kept up with it. My father liked to go to this store in Memphis to buy like the Times of London and the International Herald Tribune. He sort of loved to read and be international. So I would always grab the Times of London and look for the football scores. So I just kind of always paid attention. And then I went in my early 20s, I went on a trip, backpacking youth hostel tour of England. And it was in March of 1990. And again, I later filled in all the history, but I just remember being in a pub, looking at football, soccer highlights on a television with two other guys next to me. And one of them, we were watching, and one of them smacked the other one on the shoulder and said, "Look at Oldham." And I thought, what? What is Oldham and what are you talking about? And he looked at me and he said, "They're in the semifinals of the cup, mate." And I was like, I don't know what that means either, but yay, Yeah, it turns out 1989-90 FA Cup, Oldham went on a magical run and they took Man United to a replay in the semifinals. I didn't know any of it. I just knew that there was a thing called the FA Cup, and there's somebody called Oldham that apparently is not a big team, and everybody in the country was talking about him. I was like, this is amazing.
I had a similar situation. That was the first night I was ever in Europe. I was staying in London, and in the bar, the place I was staying, Chelsea was playing a Russian team. At this point, I don't know if I had known about what Champions League was all about. I think I had heard of it, but maybe I didn't. But I remember just being confounded as well, looking up at it, and it seemed so exotic. This team that was playing about a couple miles from where I was staying was playing a team from Russia on a Thursday night in November.
Yeah.
And they were, a few of the people who were watching it were international, but they were pulling for Chelsea, and they were disappointed that it turned out to be a draw. It was this door opening to this world of international sports a little bit of, it doesn't work the same as it does back home.
Right, exactly. It's a different system.
And it just became kind of that symbol. But it just seemed so, travel-y.
Yeah, that there's just a big, broad, fascinating world out there,
Yes.
And you just want to explore it.
And logos and stadiums that you know nothing about.
Yeah.
And it's all waiting to be discovered.
Right. Yeah. And songs.
Maybe we'll get you to sing a little bit later.
Well, we'll see. I do know the words to the Greasy Chip Buddy song from Sheffield United. So I never cared who was going to win or who's playing or the players or any of that kind of stuff. I was just always interested in the culture of it, the history, the stories, the singing, and I was like, someday I have to go to a game. Eventually that came around.
And take me to that day.
Well, the first one was actually in the Netherlands. I was in Amsterdam, and it was really cold, and I just kind of finished all the tourist stuff. So I just went to the tourist office and said, "Is there a game happening?" And they said, "Yeah, Feyenoord is playing tonight." I'm like, "All right." So off I went to Rotterdam and watched them destroy somebody. But then I saw the stadium in Rotterdam, and I was, wow,
This is serious business.
Serious business. And it wasn't even a big game. They beat some tiny little team, 4-0, I think it was. But yeah, being in that stadium with the singing, and like I remember there was a special train that went from from Amsterdam over there. Anyway, I just remember a train full of people drinking and singing, and I just, this is everything I thought it was going to be. So then I just began a habit of like, well, wherever I am, I'm going to try to go to a game. To sort of get into where the company came from, as a career in those days, I was a sports writer for newspapers. And then I became a freelance writer, freelance sports, freelance travel writer, food writing, outdoors, all this kind of stuff. I was also a tour guide in Portland, Oregon, where I was living by that time. And in 2011, I guess it was, I was visiting friends in London, and my buddy said, he's an Arsenal fan. He said, "Do you want to go to an Arsenal game?" And I said, "Yep, let's go to an Arsenal game." And so we went, and there it was again, 60,000 people, the singing, and in that particular case, it was a bunch of really frustrated, angry Arsenal fans. But I thought that was fascinating too, because I was like a freelance writer. You're always looking for stuff to write about, and it occurred to me, all these Americans are watching this on television, and they all want to go, but nobody knows how to get tickets. In fact, literally, when he said, "Do you want to go to Arsenal?" my first response was like, "Can we?" So I thought to myself, I should write about this. I should explain, how does this work? Like, what is it actually like to be in the stadium? What are they singing? How do you get tickets? What games are interesting to see? What pubs are fun to go to before the game? Like write a practical, I called it a travel and cultural guide to English football for Americans. That's what I set out to do. And my idea was to write a book and just go to as many games as I could and explain everything that I could find. And so I began to write blog posts and sort of prepare, to publish this book. I was publishing my own guidebooks by that point. And so I was like, great, I'm going to write this book and publish it. And I actually took the idea to a publishing guru of mine. And I said, here's what I think I'm going to do. And he said, that sounds really fun, but it's a terrible idea. Like nobody will ever buy that book. And he was right, by the way, because he said, you're not known in the world of soccer and you're beyond Portland. Nobody knows who you are. And there's nothing personal, but you're not going to sell many of those books, but it would be fun to do. And I was like, all right, well, then I'm going to do it. I was living in Portland, and a few times a year, I'd go to England for a couple of weeks and see as many games as I could and write blog posts. And then people began to contact me and say, well, which game should I go to? And so I began to advise them on what games to go to.
And then things spiraled a bit.
Well, yeah, I've often referred to it as like you sort of like skipping from one rock to another, and then you look up and you realize that you crossed a river. And I didn't even know there was a river there. I just like, oh, the next thing seems interesting. And so, sure, I can advise people on what game to go to. And then my buddy was like, you should charge them. I was like, oh, all right. So now I'm getting paid to help people plan their trips. And that was fun, And then in my capacity as a tour guide, when I was in London once, I went to this big travel show that's like a wholesale travel show. So I'd been leading trips to Italy as a tour guide, and I wanted to lead trips to like Iceland and all these other places. So I went to this show to look for like hiking guides in Iceland and drivers in Scotland and whatever, all the people that you need to put a trip together. And I saw a booth of a company that said they were official resellers of Liverpool Football Club. And I said, what does that mean? I walked into the booth and said, what is it? He said, yeah, so we have a contract with Liverpool and we have 200 tickets to every game. And, we resell them to people. And I said, like who? And he said, well, anybody, travel agents, blah, blah, blah. And I said, wait, so if I sign up with you, I can buy Liverpool tickets from you and resell them to people. And he said, yeah. And I said, oh, where do I sign up? And they had lots of other clubs. And, then as I began to learn about the industry, I now buy tickets from 6 different such sources. And so I began to learn, I had already learned the world of how do you go to games? How do you get tickets? What's this all like? Now I was learning the soccer ticket industry, which I'm still learning.
So let's be clear. You're not in it just for the money. It's the passion, but the money's a nice side.
It is how I make my living. Yes. My friends tease me about like, oh my gosh, I gotta go work in Seville this weekend because, the 2 teams there are playing each other and I need to go see that.
Research.
Sometimes that's my job. Other times my job is to sit at my computer and, do whatever it is the business owner has to do. But yes, fundamentally, that's the business is official tickets plus the knowledge that I have. I've been to almost 300 games in the UK and Europe now. Like I've sat in those seats. I know the best way to get to the San Siro in Milan, and I know, the whole thing. This is what I do. How do you get tickets? Why do the games change? What is the FA Cup? What's the League Cup? Is it safe? So many questions. So we have the answers to those questions, and we don't mind answering them. We love it. That's our favorite thing.
You started with Arsenal, but now you are the only known American. Now we want to be clear. We don't want to offend anyone if there's someone out there listening. You're the only known American to have visited all 92 soccer grounds of the top 4 leagues of the English football pyramid.
That is correct. Correct that as far as we know, I'm the only American to have done it.
There could have been someone else, but maybe they've been lost to history and they don't have an online presence.
Right. Or it could be somebody like yourself who is American but lives in England. That would have been a much easier way to do it rather than making trips to England. I've never lived in England. It took me 9 years to get through the 92. Right.
Doing the 92. It's not like doing the do.
No. So the English league system is arranged in a pyramid. So at the top is the Premier League, which everybody knows. The next three divisions are called the Football League, and there's three leagues there with 24 teams in each. There's 20 in the Premier League. So in those top four divisions at any given time, there are 92 teams. They change because of promotion and relegation, and in Tier 5, there's a league, and in Tier 6, there's two leagues, and in Tier 7, I think there's five, and then it gets way out of control. It goes down to Tier 10. There's hundreds and hundreds of teams. To have done the 92 means that you have attended a competitive game at all of the grounds currently in those top four divisions. And I first completed that in the spring of last year of 2024. So with a game at Plymouth Argyle. There is a 92 club, but it's very antiquated for how to apply for membership. So I haven't gone through that process yet. And I've reached out to them to see, do you know of any Americans that have done this? And I haven't heard back. So they only have about 1,100 members.
Still pretty good. I mean, that's going to be, so they got like a little club somewhere where you come in, you show a passcode, you show your pins that you've picked up, and then they let you in a secret passage, or...
I think it's more like a guy in, Chiswick with a mailbox, and I'm not really sure. I don't think there's a clubhouse. No, nobody would be there because they're all out at games. And there are people who have been to hundreds of grounds. And my personal favorite is I recently met a fan of Birmingham City who has seen Birmingham City at 87 of the current 92 grounds. There are people who have seen their team play at all 92.
So, wow, that's impressive. So the thing I got to ask, though, is so you've got the 92, but then someone drops out.
Right.
So now there's somebody coming up and you've got a hole.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you've got to go rush out to that new one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. A couple of years ago when Harrogate Town, who you probably know, they got to the league, as they call it. So when you get to the football league, you're now a league club, and they had never been there, and they got there. And I went to one of their first home games, and I cannot tell you how many middle-aged random British dudes were just hanging out by themselves because we were all there to make sure that we had this new ground on our list. And, you could spot them.
Now, normally that might be a cause for concern.
Exactly. Yeah. When that many, 60-something-year-old dudes gather together drinking beer, there could be trouble,
It's funny you mentioned Harrogate Town, because that is actually a ground I've been to with Stu Wilson, who was a guest on this show, and my mate James, that listeners will remember that I met in Vienna.
Okay.
We went to see a game at Harrogate Town and saw the great Nicky Clee play. That was fun. But yeah, Harrogate Town's one. Now, I haven't been to many grounds. I'm not going to lie, but I'm living vicariously through you. But it's just great, the culture of it here. I'll put on Match of the Day on a Saturday night, and just when the music comes on, it takes you away to another place. And up and down the country, everyone has lived and died with their team on that Saturday. It's
right. Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to talk to you about, was your mantra and, philosophy is, obviously you love soccer and you love watching the games, but it's more about how it connects you to the place.
Exactly. And to the other people there. One of the things we try to do, because, by the way, just going back to the original story, I said I was going to write a book, and I did. And so we update it every year. So one of the things is when people buy tickets from us, we send them the book. And so if they are going to a game, at, Sheffield Wednesday, for example, we'll send you everything we know about Sheffield Wednesday, including the history of the club and some interesting games from the past and what the stadium's like and all of that. What we hope is that with this knowledge and with this perspective, when you sit down next to a proper longtime Sheffield Wednesday fan, if that person wants to have a conversation with you, you will have some things to talk about. You can say, oh, were you here when you guys, beat Sheffield United in the Cup semifinal and played at Wembley? Yes, I was, and now they'll be surprised that this visiting person knows about that. And now, maybe you can have a conversation. Or when you're at Sheffield United, and you hear the beginning of the John Denver song at the beginning of the game, and you will know that they're about to sing the famous Greasy Chip Buddy song, and you're going to know the words because we send them to you. So yes, it's about the connection. It's the games are fun. Sometimes the games are boring, but the experience is always memorable.
Yeah, and that's, with a lot of things in Europe, it's you remember the people often longer than you remember, of course, the sights, the other things you did, but the people stick with you and those moments of connection.
Absolutely. I've always told people, like, okay, so you go to Italy, for example, and you take the train and you take a taxi to your hotel, and then you go out to the restaurant and you have a lovely Italian meal. And I think if you want to have a conversation, if you want to know what that cab driver is thinking about, so you want to have a conversation with your taxi driver and enter their world, an actual Italian life, learn something about the local clubs, ask them which one they support, and off you go. I mean, I spent 20 minutes going to the Florence airport, having seen Fiorentina the day before, discussing with the cab driver two subjects, actually. One, how to properly care for the olive oil I had purchased, and two, how the midfield was working at Fiorentina.
And I'm guessing he wasn't happy with the way it was working.
No, one of their best players was nursing an injury, and at the time they had this really good striker named Vlahovic, I think was his name, who got a hat trick the day I saw him, and everybody knew he was going to leave Fiorentina. I knew it, the driver knew it, everybody knew guys like this don't stay at Fiorentina, and everybody kept saying, just not Juventus, please. When he leaves, don't go to Juventus. He's now at Juventus, so. The point is, like, if you were just in Italy, I mean, you could have a great time in Florence, don't get me wrong. But if you want to go to that next level, go to a game and have a conversation about it with your taxi driver.
What is the gap between the train and the platform?
Okay, well, I just wanted to take a second to say thanks for listening to Rails, Ales, and Old Towns. I hope you're enjoying this episode and that it's helping you get excited for your next European adventure. Be sure to check out the link in the episode description, because there you'll find all the information you need if you decide to follow up on the places and topics that came up on the show. Oh yeah, if you are digging the podcast and you had a spare minute, I'd be forever grateful if you were to leave a review or a rating on the platform you're listening on, as those little things do go a long way. And if you really want to get crazy, why not give me a follow on Instagram or Facebook at Rails, Ales, Old Towns. Back to the show.
What is the gap between the train and the platform?
So let's talk about, just in general, from all your experience in Europe and Britain, what would you say, if you had to distill down a few, what are some of your favorite experiences and places to go?
Favorite places to go, there's sort of a few different categories. There's the big, like, impressive, like, amazing atmosphere places, some of which will be obvious. Liverpool really does live up to its reputation. That is a remarkable place to see a game, especially if it's a big game, if you can see a big European game at Liverpool, etc. And then other places that I imagine, if you're watching on television, you probably have a sense that Newcastle United is a pretty impressive atmosphere. But you cannot imagine what that place is like. In part because, and this is kind of the irony of our business, I guess, everybody in that stadium, it seems, is from Newcastle. They don't work with resellers. They don't do it. All of those tickets seem to be sold locally, and that place is nuts. So, those big stadiums with that big game atmosphere, it's just really impressive. And but then there's the sort of traditional places, like I've mentioned previously, the two clubs in Sheffield, two old historic clubs, two old historic stadiums, big fan bases. Even though they haven't won anything forever, they still basically fill the stadium. Wednesday's a little bit of a mess right now, but that kind of thing I really love. Like, give me a Norwich City, for example. They kind of bounce back and forth between the divisions, but they got a great stadium, beautiful city, amazing fans, and it's just a lot of fun to go. And then there's the quirky old places, your Luton Town, for example. Luton Town is a famous stadium for being an absolute dump. It is just a miserable falling down place that they don't spend money on because they're trying to build a new stadium. So they're just keeping the other one propped up as long as they can. So it's like 1974 in there. It's chipped paint and water dripping and plastic seats bolted onto concrete. I mean, it's just a mess.
And they were in the Premier League a couple years
They
ago.
were in the Premier League, and they basically had to rebuild part of their stadium just to house the media. So that's like a pro tip. Like people say, oh, I want to go to Luton Town. Well, now they're back down in League One, the third tier. You can get a ticket to Luton Town. Just don't sit in the new part, because the new part is just like aluminum benches, and you'll miss the whole point. So go sit over in the dumpy old main stand. And then, just to me, just these places, like I always think of Stockport County, which is right outside of Manchester, that, it's just not glamorous at all. And it's not, but it's a 10-minute walk from the train station. It's 30 minutes from the middle of Manchester. And it's just a proper old parts of that stadium are from the 1920s. When the players walk out of the dressing room, they walk through the seating area. Like the ushers have to kind of hold people coming back with their pie and their tea to go to their seats, have to stop and wait for the players to go by, And I was at Stockport County sitting next to a man in his mid-80s who'd been going to games since he was 6 years old. He told me when his dad came back from the war, he brought me to a game here. And I said, where did you sit that day? And he literally pointed across the way and said, right over there. He'd been coming for 75 years.
That's something special. Those are some of the, your favorite places. What about some places in Europe and Britain that people wouldn't even, suspect as a good place to watch football? Any like little tips or secrets?
Last season I went to a game at Pisa in Italy, as in Leaning Tower, and there's a perfect image there because from the top of the Leaning Tower, you can see the stadium. And when I was there, you're in the stadium with the flag wavers and the jumpers and the whole scene that's happening. And there are tourists in the top of that tower who are only there to go up that tower and then leave and go to Florence or whatever for the next tourist attraction. And they're looking over and they see flags in the stadium and, I wonder what's going on there. And again, it's like, what's going on there is the primary activity of interest for the people who live in Pisa today. Because that particular year they were chasing promotion, and they were playing a regional rival. I mean, I couldn't even find my assigned seat or anybody to ask where my assigned seat was. So it's just like your ticket gets you in the stadium, and then just pick a place. I don't know, go stand over there. And now they're in Serie A. And so right there, literally under the nose of millions of tourists is Serie A football going on at a 1930s stadium full of locals. So just go over there. just take an afternoon away from the tower and go to a game. You'll love it.
You're also telling us, like, there's so much more than the top leagues in all these countries.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I also love hiking. So I was up in a region of Italy called Abruzzo, which is east of Rome, up in the mountains. And yeah, I went into a restaurant, and the guy had a little flag kind of thing that said calcio, which is Italian for soccer. And I said, "Oh, is there a club here?" And he said, "Yeah, but they're in the 5th tier." And I was like, "Oh, really? When's the next game?" And so I went out there with about 500 people, out in this incredibly scenic stadium up in the mountains with their little ultras group of about 30 guys behind the goal doing choreographed cheers. I mean, it's remarkable.
He's like, they're in the 5th league. You're like, tell me more.
Exactly. Like, then I really want to go,
Any other place in Europe or Britain besides Pisa?
I mean, Exeter City is another one. Not on the tourist radar, or certainly not on the football radar, but a beautiful medieval city with an 11th century cathedral and a supporter-owned club. Has been for years, that behind one goal, they have the largest standing only terrace left in the English Football League. It holds over 4,000 people, all standing general admission space. So that kind of thing, you just it's a 2-hour train ride from London. Just go out there and spend the night, go sit in a 15th century pub, walk around this beautiful old city, go see a game. It's amazing.
Yeah, and that's a great area of the country down in the Southwest, Devon, Cornwall.
Just in general, like favorite places to see games. I mean, Italy truly is one of my, for one thing, it's Italy. For another thing, they tend to have older stadiums and it's kind of untouched, if you will, by this sort of international world of tourism. I mean, there's obviously a lot of tourists in these Italian cities, but they don't go to the games. Drama and the screaming, and it's madness.
It's the full experience.
It's the whole experience. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you touched on something with Exeter there. It's like, an experience because these games only last 90 minutes.
Right. Yeah. You make a day of it, because yes, it's fun to sit and watch the game, but there's so much more you could be doing. What if you were meeting local people and hearing them tell stories, and maybe they teach you the words to the songs, and if the game happens to be memorable and entertaining, great. But either way, you're going to have a local connected experience. And the thing is, almost anywhere in the world you go, you can catch a game and talk to people about soccer.
So why is it so hard to get tickets?
Well, it's because of demand, combined with that the demand is very focused on a fairly small number of Premier League clubs. And the stadiums are just not that big, coming from the United States where we're used to college football having 100,000 seats, and you find out that Arsenal, for example, has 60,000, Chelsea has 40 something thousand, multiple winners of the Champions League that have less than 50,000 seats. So it's just a lot of people trying to get in there. That's the general answer. It's also the way they allocate tickets. They got season ticket holders, members, and the general public. But anybody can be a member, and that gets you priority access. And what has happened now, the BBC just did a big article about this recently. There's a lot of people that get memberships to these clubs and then build software robots to hoover up as many tickets as they can and then resell them illegally, which is against UK law, but those sites are based outside of England. So it's just this arms race to see who can get the tickets and who can, and then what that does to the price and everything else. But that's only at really, like in England, that's at the Premier League clubs and just a couple of clubs in the second tier. After that, there's a handful where if you get a membership, you'll probably get a ticket. And then there's a bunch where we call them walk-ups. Like you want to go to Charlton Athletic in Southeast London, just go over there. Go over there the day of the game and go buy a ticket and sit down and enjoy the game.
Once in Barcelona on a Champions League night in September, just showed up.
Yep.
milled around, made eye contact. People could figure out, people know what you were interested in, and ended up people, exchanging cash. I don't remember how much, but then ended up when someone's badge going in.
Yeah.
Like the fifth row.
Right. Oh wow. Wow.
So that was risky.
Yeah, but you got in.
Got in. But you're providing completely legit retail.
Absolutely. Yeah, everything we sell is because some company went to the club, signed a contract, owns a bunch of tickets to every game, and they pay licensing fees, and I don't know what they pay, but and then we are sales agents, so we can access that stock of tickets and resell them. So yes, we don't deal with the guy on the street or the guy's member badge or whatever it is. We don't do that.
And quick, which clubs are you providing?
About 13 of the current 20 Premier League clubs. Another 3 or 4 in the Championship. There's about, if you add up all of UK and Europe, it's about 80 clubs. So the ones in the Premier League, I mean, all the London clubs in the Premier League and Championship, Liverpool, Everton, both Manchester teams. We just picked up Bournemouth. That's kind of cool. They've only got a 10,000 seat stadium in the Premier League, so that's an impossible ticket. Yeah, and then in Europe, I mean, it's most of the big European clubs that anybody will have heard of: Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, PSG. A couple of the big, we don't have Ajax, but the other big clubs in the Netherlands, we have, lots of them, lots of Italian clubs, lots of other Spanish clubs.
So basically, anywhere you're going in Europe, probably you might have a solution for somebody.
Generally speaking, yeah. And in fact, it's always funny, especially when it comes to Champions League, Europa League, these kinds of when these schedules come out. And I tell people, like, I realize like some of these clubs are not high on your radar that you've always dreamed of playing, but just look at where they are. Like they're in Torino, they're in Milan, they're in Paris, they're in Marseille, they're in Geneva, they're in Bruges. I mean, it's like
Yeah,
all of these places that you want to go anyway. Look at the itineraries that you can put together just around going to some games. It's
absolutely. Yeah,
like pick
that's
a
a real.
country in the fall, and you want to go to France, Italy, Spain, Germany, England, Scott. Where do you want to go? And then there's you can see 10 games in 2 weeks.
That leads me into the last thing I wanted to mention was what really motivated me to reach out and ask you to be on the podcast was your eloquent description of, in quotes, European nights in the autumn, or why autumn is the best time of year in your opinion to come over.
Yeah.
And the way you describe just the magic of those weekday nights where there's probably a Champions League game or Europa League game on. Yeah, take it from here.
Yeah, so the way the Champions League and Europa League and Conference League, these are the three European tournaments. The way they're all set up is they play on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights. And the first part of this thing, which runs from September to January, everybody plays 7 or 8 games, I think it is. And so you know ahead of time who's playing on what nights. So there's all these weeks when all these teams are traveling around Europe playing each other in the middle of the week. And then they have their regular league games on the weekend.
And, just in case someone, is just kind of new to this or isn't hardcore into European soccer, these teams are playing, 90% of the teams are playing in a domestic league, but they will also have potential to be playing in against other teams in Europe, depending on how well they've done the year before. I don't want to get into all the crazy details.
Sure. Yes.
But most teams you've heard of or that you're selling tickets to will probably be paying in a domestic and a European league.
Yeah, they're all in a domestic league, and many, like this season, 9 of the 20 Premier League teams are also playing in European competitions, as are both of the teams in Glasgow, for example. So there are a lot of weeks, especially in the fall and early winter, when there are multiple games on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night. So Liverpool might play Burnley on Saturday, and then Tuesday they might play Atletico Madrid. So for one thing, that means you can be in Liverpool for 4 or 5 days and see 2 games. But what it really means is that on that Tuesday, there's going to be about 3,000 Spanish people roaming the streets of Liverpool and packing a corner of the stadium, putting on the best show that they can, supporting their team in a very European way, which means drums and flags and singing and jumping up and down and just random things. Like I saw a team from Croatia play at Manchester City one time, and when City scored a goal, all the Croatian fans, as some kind of act of defiance or something, they all took their shirts off. Like 2 or 3,000 fans just all of a sudden were shirtless and very, very pale. I have to say, it was blindingly white, So it's just a completely different kind of atmosphere when there's all these European folks, people from all these other countries that are there. And for some of them, it is a big deal. Like some team from Norway, might put together a magical run and qualify for this tournament and get to the league stage, as they call it. And now they're playing at Manchester United. And in the world of football, maybe nobody cares about Bodo Glimt visiting Manchester United, because all they want to talk about is the Manchester United manager going to get sacked, right? There's a whole drama about that. But I promise you, for those 3,000 Norwegians in the corner of that stadium, this is one of the biggest nights of their life. And if you know about that and you connect with that and you hang out with those people perhaps before the game, that's what it's all about.
Now, the other thing is, because of the autumn has this stability, because that's another thing we don't have time to get into either, but sometimes because of other competitions which are going on, the domestic leagues or cups, which is a whole nother animal, some of these games can get shifted on time, but the dates and the times, but that usually is going to happen later in the year.
Yeah, that happens. That is more problematic starting in about February.
Okay.
Yeah, in the fall, especially after the 1st of September or so, the schedule pretty much through January at that point. After that, there are weekends. Unfortunately, a couple of them kind of line up with the American spring break. And people say, oh, yeah, we're coming for spring break and we want to go to a game, March, whatever. We're like, man, if you can choose another weekend, you really should, because we might not know the schedule of those games until 2 weeks before. They want to buy airplane tickets. They want to buy show tickets for London. They want to get their tours booked. And they're like, yeah, but when's the game? Like, well, I'll have to let you know.
What autumn has too is that you get the dark. The dark is back. It's a nighttime, but it can still be warm.
Right.
And there's something about, sitting outside with the floodlights on the pitch and it's warm and it's comfortable, where even in spring, it's going to be a bit raw, possibly, weather.
Right.
Where in the autumn, you're getting that afterglow of summer and you can just sit there and enjoy it.
Right. When the game's over, you're in Barcelona or you're in Seville or you're in Rome. Saturday, go to a game in Madrid. Sunday, go to a game in San Sebastian. Tuesday, go to Bilbao, and the next weekend be in Barcelona. That's completely possible.
And you could put something together like that for somebody.
Oh yeah, I mentioned those because we sell tickets at all of them. Yes.
Okay.
But they're amazing cities, and the stories behind these clubs are fascinating. And again, when it's over, you're going out to dinner in Florence or Milan or whatever it might be. So yeah, I was thinking earlier, it's kind of like you start out in your own little world, right? And of your family and your hometown. And like some of us get hooked on exploring the world, and like, what is it that leads you out of your original kind of place? And for me, like, I got into hiking. So I found the Rocky Mountains, and then I learned about all the other mountains of the world. And I was like, dreamed of hiking all over the place. And then I found soccer, and that led me to England and then to Europe, and then anywhere you want to go. It's like an international language, and so that has been the pathway through which I have explored the world, and it never stops. It is global, and it's the same game everywhere. And if you're talking to a cab driver about the local midfield in Italy or in Burma, I mean, it's going to be the same conversation. You're talking about the same stuff.
Yeah, that they're rubbish and we need a new guy in.
Yeah, they're never happy. That's for sure.
All right, Paul. Well, thanks for stopping by. We could talk for hours about the nuances and the fun to be had out there, but thanks for all you do, showing people the culture and the beautiful game in Europe.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me on. And I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't just say groundhopperguides.com. There you go.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is that the best way to get started on a journey?
That's where it goes. Yep.
All right. Groundhopperguides.com, guys. I'll see you at a ground here soon.
I hope so. Thanks for having me on.